Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce Vid Desai. He's a seasoned technology leader who brings more than 30 years of experience in the information technology field, with over 26 years in the healthcare and life science industries. He has previous experience working for large pharma, clinical research organizations, and medical device companies. As the FDA Chief Technology Officer, Vid is the day-to-day operations and technical leader of the Office of Information Management and Technology. This group is FDA's enterprise technology team that supports all of the FDA centers and offices for their enterprise technology needs. This team oversees the overall FDA IT spend of over $750 million and a staff of around 2,500 employees and contractors. Prior to joining the FDA, Vid held the Chief Information Officer roles at Bayer Medical, a respiratory medical device company formed from a divestiture of Becton Dickinson. He was CIO at EndoChoice, a GI device and services provider, and Lake Region Medical, which was acquired by Great Bach to form Integer, a medical device outsource manufacturer. Vid's previous experience includes IT leadership roles with large clinical research organizations and pharmaceuticals, including Quintiles Transnational, where he served as executive director of global IT infrastructure. Prior to Quintiles, Vid held several leadership positions of increasing responsibility with GlaxoSmithKline. Vid started his career in IT as a software engineer at Digital Equipment Corporation in Reading, UK. Vid holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science, first class with honors, from Royal Holloway College, University of London. With that, I'll let you take it away, Vid. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And let me get my presentation going. So hopefully people can see my screen. So good afternoon to everybody today. I thought I'd share a little perspective on what we're doing at the FDA and some of the emerging trends and opportunities that we see in front of us and that are likely to shake the healthcare industry. So with that, let me get started. So, what we're going to talk about today is a little introduction to what the FDA does. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the key functions we work in, and then we'll transition into how the scientific technology and some of the regulatory changes are creating opportunity, especially for the entrepreneurs that are attending today. So let's start with the mission of the FDA. Many folks probably know us as a regulatory agency, primarily involved in the drug approval side, but the FDA does a lot more than that. So we're responsible for protecting the public health, the safety and the efficacy and the security of not just human drugs, but also veterinary drugs, also biological products, medical devices, and ensuring the safety of the nation's food supply, cosmetics, products that emit radiation, and also the public health issues connected with tobacco. So a very broad portfolio of products are under the regulatory authority of the FDA. As an agency, our budget is roughly $6 billion annually. We employ about 17,000 employees and about 22,000 heads, which includes contractors. Just some metrics specifically from the IT area, which I'm responsible for. IT, we spend roughly $850 million now, and within the enterprise IT team that I manage, roughly 2,500 heads involved there. To again expand a little bit on the FDA side of things and the scope of products that we regulate about 20 cents of every dollar that an American spends in the U.S. So just think about that. I mean, that's a very significant breadth of products. Literally, you could walk into your local pharmacy, CVS or Walgreens or something like that, and over 95% of the products you see there are regulated by us. We do this through a number of centers, and those are kind of described over here. So CBER is the center that regulates the biological products, including blood, vaccines, allogenics, cellular and gene therapies. So in the current environment within COVID, CBER would be the function that is primarily involved in approving of the vaccines that we've been hearing of an awful lot about over the last few months. CDER, on the other side, is where we regulate things like prescription drugs, therapeutics, generic drugs, and it also includes some off-the-shelf types of products like fluoride toothpaste and antiperspirants, shampoos, sunscreens. All of those are considered drugs. And so again, relating this to the types of things that you heard about in the pandemic, where all of us have gotten unusually educated on the approval processes involved with drugs and therapeutics, while CBER regulates vaccines, CDER regulates things like the therapeutics, so remdesivir and things like that, and whether that is effective or not would be the types of things that CDER would regulate. CDRH, on the other hand, regulates medical devices, and this includes radiation-emitting products. And from a pandemic perspective, we've heard a lot about testing and testing kits. That would fall under the purview of CDRH. Those are the teams that look at the testing kits that many of us may have taken to see if we are testing positive or negative to COVID. And that's under the regulatory authority of CDRH. CIFSAN, on the other hand, regulates food and cosmetics, so the entire food supply chain. So oftentimes in the year you'll hear about tainted lettuce or bad lettuce or lettuce tainted by salmonella and things like that. Those are the types of things CIFSAN worries about. They look at the entire food supply chain, and their job is to ensure that the food, whether it's imported or domestically provided, ends up on our tables in a safe manner. CTP is our tobacco group, and they basically implement the regulations around the use and the health issues concerned with tobacco. And there's a Tobacco Control Act that was passed, and that's what CTP focuses on. And finally, CVM is something people don't often think about as associated with the FDA, but human and animal health, veterinary drugs, devices, and foods are equally important. We love our pets and animals, and there are veterinary drugs, devices, and food issues to be managed, and that also falls within the purview of what the FDA does. At a very broad level, there are two big areas that we function in. So I talked a little bit about regulatory approvals and authorizations. So of all the products that we just talked about, when new products or there are significant changes being introduced, they've got to go through a regulatory approval process where we want to make sure that the products that are released are safe, and if there are drugs or devices, that they have the appropriate efficacy associated with them. So that's a big part of what we do on the regulatory approval and authorization side. Then on the monitoring side, something again a lot of people don't think about, even once a product is released, we need to make sure that the products remain safe, that there are no adverse reactions being reported for those products, or in the case of food, if there are reports of bad lettuce, that we are taking appropriate regulatory actions to have them pulled off the shelves. And the way we do a lot of this work is through various inspections and audits. When if you think about the drug development side or the medical development side, the supply chain, we take an interest in inspecting how the product gets developed and shipped, and we want to ensure that it is not only developed and manufactured safely, but it is transported appropriately and safely to where it's sold. And we do this through various inspections and audits. And then the other component is safety enforcements. You don't typically associate this with the FDA, but we actually have uniformed people that are present at our international borders and international mail facilities that actually work hand in hand with CBP and other organizations like that, the Custom and Border Patrol officers, where we look for imported goods products to ensure that unsafe drugs or healthcare treatments or fake drugs are not coming in. So that's a very big part of the work that we do to ensure that unsafe drugs or treatments or fake drugs or counterfeit products are not entering into our supply chain or getting to or impacting American citizens' health. So that's a little bit about what we do. And the reason you want to think and understand that is, I'm going to transition a little bit in the next few slides to the significant changes that are happening in this area. I think Jack Welch coined this phrase, where there's change, there's opportunity. And there is a very significant amount of change underway in the healthcare and the regulatory environments of the FDA. And just to kind of put a little scope around that, in the 60s, just looking at the healthcare side of what we do, we were spending about 5% of GDP on the healthcare side. Today, we are spending upwards of 18% of the GDP on healthcare. In 2020, that amounts to about $4 trillion just on the healthcare side, and this is projected to increase to over 6.2 trillion. It's an increase of about 5.4% annually between now and 2028. The other thing that's changing very significantly are the science is changing. So genomics and DNA based therapies and treatments are now increasingly part of what we're doing. In the past, it was very chemistry based. But now we're moving into an era where we're shifting towards personalized treatments and medications. A pharmaceutical, for example, that if you go back 10, 20, 30 years, around the time when I first started my career in the pharmaceutical industry, you literally had the large pharmaceuticals were developing 3 or 4 big blockbuster drugs, and the majority of the revenues were coming from those 3 or 4 drugs. Today, they have to develop 50, 60, 70 different entities and drugs to generate the same amount of revenue. And the reason for that is we're moving more and more into personalized treatment, and this is a trend that is going to expand and increase very significantly across the healthcare environment because the genomics and the DNA side of things just allow us to get much more specialized and surgically precise in how we treat certain diseases. The other area of change, obviously, is technology, and many of the folks attending here probably come from this area. So cloud, big data, IoT, AI, advanced analytics, all of those things are also very significantly changing how we do work at the FDA. And finally, there's been some very significant legislative changes that have influenced much of what we're going to be doing in the future. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides. So going back to the regulatory activity, big data, genomics data sets, DNA data sets, there's a lot of really good data and information available in the environment to help us make very good, precise regulatory decision making. So we see that as a very significant change. Everything we do in the agency is based on science and data. And so data sets that are submitted to us during the reevaluation process, but also information and data that's available in the industry or in the public domain is very, very important to us in terms of how we conduct our regulatory work. And even if you just think about the pandemic and the types of questions people have looked to the FDA to answer, the secondary and the tertiary drug shortages that can occur, we need to manage the supply chain. And to manage the supply chain, there is a whole lot of different data sets we need to have very quick, real-time access to. So that's very much changing the nature of how we do our regulatory work. The other area is digital health technologies. A lot of us wear these the Apple Watches, and wearable technologies are increasingly aimed at improving our how we manage our own personal health. it's not unusual now to see diabetics scan their arm or their stomach areas where there's a little sensor to see what their blood sugar levels may be. So those types of technologies are increasingly coming available. And also in terms of how drugs are delivered, oftentimes, it's no longer just a pill or a injection or something like that. We're increasingly using combination products where a device administers drug and it takes its cues based on real-time data that it's picking up in terms of how much of a dosage to administer. And so we're getting into this world of real-time monitoring of how a patient responds and how we provide treatment. So the digital health technology area is exploding very, very significantly and creating all kinds of new opportunities. And then the final two bullets here point to some legislative changes that are making some significant changes in what we do. So the 21st Century Cures legislation, which was introduced at the end of 2016, opened the whole door of real-world evidence. It basically opens the door, allows us to use real-world evidence to make many of our regulatory decisions. And then the other act, which is equally important, is in 2009, the Recovery Act, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, basically started the movement towards electronic health records. Before that, it was very difficult for us to piece together the journey of a patient, to see what kinds of treatments they've had, what kind of information is available in their health record. And the digitization of the electronic health records is very significantly making information available to us to make much more informed healthcare decisions as we move forward. So it's a very significant change that's occurring and influencing big changes in the healthcare area. On the safety monitoring side, again, I talked a little bit about the lettuce recall. To be able to very precisely and quickly pull bad food items from the shelves requires us to access real-time information available about the entire supply chain and how that supply chain moves product from the farm to the table. So a lot of that kind of real-time information is becoming available to us, and we need to figure out a way, and we're busy looking at ways of how can we consume and use all that information to make quick regulatory decisions. Social media also generates a lot of pretty useful information that we need to be able to tap into. For example, you could be using any number of applications that give you feedback on restaurants or places to eat. And if you've got some comments coming in about a large number of people reporting that they're getting sick there, then there may be some data points there that we can pick up on and use that to quickly figure out if there's a broader healthcare issue that we need to be concerned about. And then this whole point about connected devices. The world is getting increasingly more connected. Our devices are getting increasingly more connected. Even the hospital equipment and the manufacturing equipment that we use is getting connected. And there's a lot of very useful information and data we can pick up from those connected devices to make more informed regulatory decisions in a lot more agile and faster way than we're able to with the static information that we consume today. And then I want you to think a little bit about the personalized point of care manufacturing, things like 3D printing, where we are now moving into an environment where personalized treatments and devices and even some minor orthopedic products could literally be printed in the doctor's office as opposed to in a manufacturing facility. So it's one thing to inspect and audit several thousand manufacturing plants around the world. It is an entirely different proposition to be able to get to a point where if those products are getting manufactured at the point of care, how do we ensure that the device that's doing that is properly calibrated and creating safe products? So those are the types of changes that we're going to have to figure out as a regulatory agency to make sure that this very highly personalized future is also properly maintained, managed, and is safe. And IoT and sensors will play a very big role in allowing us to do some of those types of inspections remotely. Equipment is getting more connected, and calibration, which is something that we look for very actively. We want to make sure that equipment that is manufacturing our very sensitive devices are properly calibrated. If they're out of calibration, they could be introducing false tolerance levels that could affect human health. And then advanced imaging. So for example, at the border and mail facilities that I talked about, the ability to just take a picture, look at the color of a tablet and be able to determine whether this is a authentic product or whether it's a counterfeit product. There's a lot of opportunity in how advanced imaging can be used in many areas of what we do in terms of inspections to do that in a fairly automated and faster way. And AI and advanced predictive modeling for inspections. There's a great use case that we recently performed in our SIPSAN, the foods area, where imported seafood was put into a predictive AI model, where we put a lot of information and data in telling the AI algorithms to help us in targeting which packages we inspect and audit. And we found a 300% increase in basically pinpointing bad imported seafood by using these AI techniques that we implemented in that proof of concept. So it's an example of the types of technological changes that are very significantly influencing and changing how many of the very routine manual activities that we're doing at the FDA today are shifting over to using technology and advanced analytics and how those things will be improved in the future. So in closing, what I want to get this audience to think about is if you factor in the very significant changes in the regulatory environment, the science, the genomics, the DNA, all that stuff, as well as on the technology side, what does the future look like? And we've recently published within the FDA IT area a Technology Modernization Action Plan, a TMAP as we call it, and we're going to be following up with a DMAP, which basically stands for a Data Modernization Action Plan, to provide a vision of how technology and data can be put to use to really improve and reimagine how a regulatory agency can provide services to its citizens of the future. And I've got a couple of examples here to kind of help you imagine what that world may look like. So imagine a time where when you go to pick up your drug from your local pharmacy, that instead of picking up and reading the little leaflets that come with the drug, all the stuff that's in small print in terms of how you may react to that drug, instead of that, being able to just scan a barcode and getting a personalized view to what your healthcare history is, what your body makeup is, what your past history and how you respond to various drugs is, and getting a personalized view to how the drug that you're about to take or the treatment you're about to take is likely to respond, and what kind of side effects you may see or you may not be affected by. So getting a very personalized view to that. The beginnings of the information for us to allow you to do this are starting to appear now. I talked quite a bit about the personalized devices and drugs that could be manufactured, already are starting to be manufactured at the point of care. And then the other example that I'm personally very, very excited about that we should be able to deliver to you soon is, again, imagine going to a grocery store and scanning a barcode and getting real-time information on whether that lettuce that you're about to purchase, whether there's any known issues in how it was transported from the farm to the table, and any other relevant information about it that you should be aware of, and being able to do that in near real time. That's the kind of future that we are starting to imagine and envision through the work that we're starting to put out and what we have started to publish through through the Technology Modernization Action Plan, soon to be followed by the Data Modernization Action Plan. So with that, I'm going to stop and see if we've got any time left for any questions. There you go.
So yeah, perfect. That's awesome. So so we do have a lot of questions coming in, and as you know, we have close to 400 registrants in this platform, and majority of them are small businesses. So I'm going to try to put together a few questions around small businesses and try to take things from there. So on one end, while small businesses are working on innovation and all these cool things, sometimes there is a lack of experience of past performance. And so the question is really around how can small businesses with a lot of these cutting edge capabilities be part of or partner with FDA, given that is things that may not be favorable on the capabilities or past performance side.
No, that's an excellent question. Well, and that's part of the reason I come spend time at forums like this. We have through our procurement department, we did a small business outreach program where we share a lot of this kind of information to attract small businesses and vendors to these types of opportunities. And we have just kicked off a program where we are starting to put together a very specific IT program that will be managed through my team, which will engage small businesses next year, where we want to share more details about this and see if there are opportunities or innovations that small business can bring to us. So it's a big part of our outreach program. We also conduct a lot of public input sessions where we invite the public. So in the formulation and development of the Technology Modernization Action Plan, we had a number of open sessions there, and we'll be doing the same thing for the DMAP. So those are great places for citizens as well as small businesses and any persons of interest to engage with us.
Awesome. Awesome. So the next theme is all about COVID, and the first one is primarily around, how did FDA internally react to COVID, and what are the kind of changes that happen, and if you can comment on a few things, then I'll go to the other related COVID questions.
Yeah. So yeah, COVID has been interesting for us. Fortunately, at the FDA, we already had a pretty healthy teleworking culture. So shifting to teleworking was not that significant an issue for us. But the extended teleworking is creating interesting opportunities for us. So just earlier we were talking about, we do a lot of public events and outreach meetings. And one recent thing that we did, typically in the past we did those in person. So if we were working on a vaccine, we would invite public input through a in-person meeting. We'd have some teleconferencing capabilities for people to participate remotely, but a lot of that was done internally. We recently did a COVID vaccine update, and given all the attention and importance globally of what we're doing there, we expected about 20,000 to 30,000 participants. Now, we've had to quickly adjust to hosting these types of very large events. So I think those have been some of the changes. The other changes are just absorbing the intense focus on COVID-related treatments, while not ignoring or deprioritizing all the other important work that happens. Because while COVID is globally important to everybody, a small, less well-known treatment area is just as important to the community that's affected by it. So we really don't have an opportunity to shut anything down. So we've had to absorb all the focus and importance of COVID in addition to what we do every day. If we've got a bad lettuce going on, we don't get to basically say, well, you know what, that's going to have to wait. That's affecting American health, and we've got to jump on that in addition to everything else that we do. So it's increased our workload a lot, and we've had to be very innovative in how we do that. But It's been an exciting and interesting time.
Perfect. So a related COVID question is, I know in general, we've seen cyber threats and all these things going up because of the pandemic. And I'm sure FDA is sitting on all this rich data, rich things that is always the focal point for all these cyber criminals. So how do you guys navigate, and what have you put in place to ensure the whole data and protecting that?
It's a good question. We've had a very mature cybersecurity program. And in fact, I've been very fortunate. I joined the FDA, and I'm fairly new to the federal government. I only joined it just over a year ago. We have a CISO who I believe, in my estimation, is the best CISO anywhere. So he's done a fantastic job of having a great cybersecurity program. But the pandemic has really raised our focus in this area. Because I've made some comments in a couple of public forums where, if you think about the submission of any therapeutic or vaccines, the pandemic has shown that it can not only affect elections, but it can affect the global economy. And I've made comments along the lines of the treatment of that address that are more valuable than anything that's in the Tower of London, held by the Queen's jewelry, or what you might find even in the Vatican Museum. The value of the treatment is of that significance, and that attracts all kinds of nefarious characters, either want to cause mischief or to delay for whatever purposes that they. And we've seen that. And so we've been working, there's an all-of-government approach to this. We have been working hand in hand through the Project Warp Speed. Pretty much every agency we can pull on, from the NSA to everybody else, is involved in ensuring the security of that information and data. So a lot of work's been going in there, and it's been a huge part of the focus and time that we've spent in the last 8-9 months preparing for the vaccines that are coming into the FDA now.
Perfect. So I'm getting flagged here for the time here, but we wanted to take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of TiE DC and the entire GovCon committee that is put together. So I think what we would like to do is definitely stay engaged with you, and the next year see how best we can work with FDA and also the small business community that we work with. Also on this note, if this was a live event, we would have given a small memento, token of appreciation. But this year, because of the remote nature, we are going to do a small donation on behalf of all the speakers and panelists to some charitable institutions here locally. So thank you so much, Vid. Appreciate your time once again.
Thank you.